It's John Gierach that says his choices have always been for more time and less money, and that's kind of, I think, what we've done.
That's our motto.
Can you imagine being the fly fisherman who was this summer standing in Cobbessy stream where it enters the Kennebec River? He looked around his feet and saw a sturgeon up to 10 feet long going right by his feet as he was fishing there.
One of the things that certainly defined my childhood was just time outdoors. So that was where we focused all of our time as kids and just throughout my young life, adventuring and exploring in the woods and the fields.
They're so precious, I would really refrain from killing any of those fish, mostly because I have such a deep respect for those fish and how valuable and what a precious resource we have here in Maine.
Welcome to Season 3 of the Flyline Podcast, where we enjoy the interesting stories behind the legendary guides and luminaries connected to Maine fishing. I'm Michael Jones. Today we'll be talking with our special guest, Bonnie Holding. Bonnie lives in Copeland Plantation with her husband Blaine. Bonnie built a career and life dedicated to fly fishing through instruction, guiding, mentoring, and public service. Bonnie has been a master Maine guide for over 30 years, and over the years, she has received some of the top accolades of recognition and merit that anyone in this sport could receive from our community. In 2008, Bonnie was recognized as one of the top 5 guides in the nation by Outdoor Life magazine. In 2010, Bonnie received the L.L. Bean Outdoor Hero Award, created to thank those who have dedicated their time to preserve the outdoors and who help to change the world around us for the better. In 2011, Bonnie was awarded the Great Women of Maine's Legacy Award from Maine Today Media, the largest media organization in Maine. In 2019, Bonnie received the Wiggy Robinson Legendary Maine Guide Award. The award is presented by the Commissioner of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife and the Maine Professional Guides Association. Bonnie was the first woman to receive this prestigious award. Beyond these recognitions, Bonnie is most proud of her work as a pioneer with Casting for Recovery, a national program that uses fly fishing and its related skills to help women recovering from breast cancer. In this heartfelt conversation, Bonnie describes the life spent guiding and paving a career as a leader and mentor in the Maine fly fishing community. It comes with great appreciation and admiration to introduce our podcast audience to Bonnie Holding. Bonnie, welcome to the Flyline Podcast.
Thank you. This is great. Thanks for coming to Sugarloaf to meet me.
And I appreciate you joining the podcast, Bonnie. You've been on my mind for years to have you on, and a lot of it's been proximity. You and I do not live close to each other, but I decided to take the plunge and make the journey and come up and see you and get you to kind of unfold the story. I mean, I think of you as a humble person that doesn't really like to promote yourself, but you have found yourself in the spotlight of the Maine fishing community, particularly in the Maine women's fly fishing community. You stand in the center of that spotlight for a lot of people. And it's for that reason that I think it's so important to get you on. And I've been encouraged and nudged by many people to say, oh, you got to get Bonnie on. I go, I know I do. And, but I am really glad that you're willing to, because some people just simply aren't wanting to do that. But it sounds like you've heard a couple of podcasts. I felt like it was a good,
I think it's a good mix. I really appreciated the podcast that you did. I thought you did a great job with them.
So often people talk about fishing stories and all that sort of thing, but the thing that I find most fascinating is the life stories that you have. I'd love to know more about how you and Blaine met and how you got going with Casting for Recovery. You work with L.L. Bean. So let's dive right in.
I'll tell you how Blaine and I met.
Yeah, let's start there.
So you would have thought that after this story, you'll say, oh, we should have figured that out back then, however many years ago now. So met in high school. Typical high school sweetheart story. We both went to Scarborough High. Just had our 50th year class reunion just last weekend, that was just wild to say that out loud. But first date, he picks me up at his good old Rambler American. And I think he said we were going into Portland, which I thought meant going out to dinner or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that, 15, 16-year-old, that's pretty exciting. I get in the car and on the floor is a tin can, like a coffee can and a flashlight. And I'm thinking, wonder what this is all about. We went into Deering Oaks to get night crawlers.
You did?
We did.
How old were you, Bonnie?
Either 15 or 16, right in that age frame.
Yeah. Are you the same age?
We are.
Yeah.
We're both 68.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know Blaine.
Yeah.
Right? I know Blaine well. So when Bob Dion and I were running the fly shop, Bonnie's husband, Blaine, we'll tell more about Blaine later, but he was a game warden.
Yes.
And so he would come in and do his filings at the courthouse, or he'd have a court date.
Right.
So he spent a lot of time. He'd bring us sandwiches or coffee
Yeah.
at the fly shop, more just to kill time.
Yes.
So I've heard more Bonnie stories from your husband than I have from you. But I think it's great because a couple that gets together at that age, which is to say your teenage years,
Yeah.
and you're together. We won't say your age now, but
Over 50 years.
over 50 years you've been together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys are just like two peas in a pod.
I think we're actually opposites, but we do have
Oh yeah,
but we do have some same interest.
yeah. You're both very laid back,
Yeah.
and you're very comfortable in any social setting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe let's go back even further a little bit. Before you met Blaine, how did you get introduced to fishing? And was it a Blaine thing, or did your dad or your
No,
mom?
it was a Blaine thing.
It was.
So I grew up with 4 brothers.
Oh.
I'm the only girl. I'm the next to the youngest. So I have 3 older brothers, 1 younger brother.
Mhm.
And they weren't into outdoor sports. They were all jocks. They're all short, 6'4", 6'5",
Wow.
6'3", 6'1", So they're little guys. So they were more into outdoor sports like that, basketball, football, and anything like that. So didn't really fish. We lived in Scarborough, grew up down Pine Point, and we go out mackerel fishing, with Christmas tree,
Sure. Yeah.
type,
By all means.
setup, and catch a bunch of mackerel. And then that was about it. Not really introduced to it at all. My grandfather had been a hunter and a fisherman, but I didn't know him that way.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't doing it, that I remember him doing that stuff. But when I met Blaine, he was definitely an outdoorsman, and his life revolved around, fishing and hunting.
So you graduate from high school.
Mm-hmm.
Do you go off to college, or do you start? What do you start doing?
I worked for a year before I went off to college, and then I did go to school for college for 1 year. I was not a student.
Sure.
It's funny. We were talking about that last weekend. Actually had the guidance counselor tell me in high school that when you're going from your junior to senior year to discuss what you should be taking for either college or technical schools or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he just told me, he said, you can walk out that front door. Nobody's going to miss you.
He said that to you.
He said that to me.
Boy, was he didn't know who he was talking to at that point. What you've become and what you've done with your life. But there's a lot of evidence really now that, the money that you put into an education isn't always money well spent.
It is not.
I can think of some of the most successful business people in Maine. We only look in Maine. Look at the original owners of Hammond Lumber.
Yeah.
They didn't go to college.
Yeah.
Some of the wealthiest people. Adrian Brochu.
Yeah.
Another great example.
Yeah.
Right up around your work, up around your area. These people are self-made millionaires.
Yeah. And it's not always about being book smart.
No.
It's just not. And, not having the attention span, not having the guidance. At that time, Scarborough wasn't considered a good school. Today, it is considered a very good school.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just wasn't at that time. It was just not a really large class. But
Interesting.
so it was just like, what does somebody like me do with their life?
So what did you do?
Yeah. So I went to work for Quaddy Moccasins right out of school.
Quaddy Moccasin.
Quaddy Moccasins. I don't know how many people remember even that, but I went to work for them, and then I decided I needed something more of a career or a better job. So I ended up going to work for Merrill Transportation.
Okay, what do they do?
They were a trucking company.
Okay, sure.
Out of Portland.
Oh yeah, Merrill Transportation.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah, they were in Portland, New Hampshire, Vermont. You kind of all over the place there. Worked for them for 9 years.
Oh yeah.
Here we go.
There we go.
So I get a phone call while I'm at work one day from this woman named Janet, and she says, "I work for LOB, and I'd like to talk to you." And she's calling me at my work.
Wow.
At Merrill Transport. And I thought, okay, you must mean you want to talk to my husband, Blaine. And she says, no, I'd like to talk to you. I'd like to, have you got time to come up for an interview? And I did that day. I was very cavalier about it because I didn't think there was a chance in the world I was going to.
Did she present to you what she wanted you to do?
Yeah. So I get up there, and, like I said, I was very casual about it because I didn't like my job. I actually hated my job.
Yeah.
I liked the people I worked with, so I was having fun, but I didn't like my job, but I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life. I didn't have really too much of a skill set. So I get there, and she says, we'd like to see you work in the fishing department. And I'm a little surprised, and we talked for a while, and I said, sure.
Of course you did.
I was going to make more money there than I was at the job. And
And you were going to have a lot more fun.
I was going to have a lot more fun, but I did not go through the admin building. I did not go through any administration. So when I gave my 2-week notice, I went up to LL Beans and I met her at the store, which anybody that works for LL Beans, that's not how that works. I didn't know that though. So I met her at the store. She got all the paperwork done, started. I worked with Dwight Lander and a couple other people there. And she was worried that the older gentlemen were going to not like me much, and they were worried how I was going to react to that. And so I grew up with 4 brothers. Bring it on.
No, you were perfect for that.
Yes, I'm not worried about that.
Now, I'm going to just, for
Sure.
a point of clarification, I don't think there had ever been a woman
They had
working at
not.
Hot Fish. So this was maybe their first stab at diversity.
It was. And she was told not to hire. She had asked about putting a woman in that department. She was told no. And she did it anyway.
Was this in like the early 70s or
No,
mid 70s?
it was actually in the mid 80s.
Mid 80s, right?
Mid 80s.
Ooh.
And so I'd been there for a few weeks. Well, actually, maybe a few months.
Mhm.
And a gentleman comes into the store. And I go to wait on him. It was in the evening. He'd obviously had been on a fishing trip, a little bit of a beard, hadn't shaved for a while, clothes kind of rumply a little bit. And I asked if I could help him. And he said, "You work in this department?" And I said, "Yes," because it said LL Bean Fly Fishing Department on my shirt. And he said, "Here, in this department." And I said again, "Yes." And he was very quiet. And he says, "Yeah, tell me about fly boxes," because that's what we were looking at. So I did. And the box I wanted to sell him was like $7.95, but we were out of stock. So I sold them with Wheatley. It's like I went the opposite direction.
Yeah.
And he left. And when he left, the coworker said, "Don't you know who that was?" And I said, "No," because we did get celebrities in there. And I wouldn't know them.
No.
I'm pretty oblivious to that stuff. And they said, "Well, that was Leanne Gorman." And that didn't mean anything to me either. And I said, "And who's that?" "Well, he runs the place."
Yeah, he's the owner of the
Right,
company.
he was. And so the next morning, he came in and it's the old store, and he leaned against the fly counter and now he's dressed appropriately for work, a nice shirt, slacks and everything. And I decided to mimic his pose. So I leaned against the fly case, crossed my arms, and I said, "Good morning." And he said, "Hi." And I said, "The guys got a pretty good chuckle last night." And he just smiled. And he said, "I guess I should have had a name tag." And I looked right at him and I said, "It wouldn't have mattered." And he got a big kick out of that.
Bonnie, that's a great story. That's a great story. And that also is really, that underscores who you are as a person. You wouldn't have changed anything about it, even if if it was the president of the United States.
No.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So would you think that was a test? Or was that just him coming back from a fishing trip
It was
and
him
needing a
coming-
box?
Him coming back from a fishing trip, he had told the manager of that department not to hire a woman, and she did it anyway. And so, since he is there, he is testing me. And at that time, I don't know how that works now, but at that time, after so many months, you're hired on a trial basis. Like a lot of companies do that.
Of course.
And then you get hired permanently or not, they let you go. And my review was coming right up. And so I was a little concerned about that. But he hired me.
Yeah.
So I stayed and I was there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So Bonnie, while you're working at LL Bean, or maybe even before, what was Blaine doing at that point?
He was a finished carpenter, and that's what he'd gone to school for. But his goal and his dream had been to be a game warden. And so it was while I was working at LL Beans that the testing process came up. And so he was hired on once I was working at Beans. And it was interesting because the academy is really long. And I want to say it was like 17 weeks for part of it. And so he was gone. He'd be home on weekends, but I'd be working.
Yeah.
And and I worked a lot of Fordham inmates at that time.
Right.
So I didn't really see a whole bunch of him then. And then once he got on officially, he took the district up here. So that's why I moved up here and I left LLB.
So you were in Southern Maine, came to Copeland Plantation,
Yes.
and never left.
Never left.
No kidding.
Yeah. He really liked it. At the time, he really wanted a woods district.
Well, he got one.
And he got one. It's not that now.
No.
There's so many roads up through there now, but it was a woods district when he came up here.
Was that culture shock for you?
Not really. Growing up in Pine Point was interesting at the time. It was a pretty rough area. there were a lot of competition between the lobstermen. There was a lot of competition between the clammers. And so there was a lot of that went on.
Tough town.
It was a tough town. And I can remember people saying, oh, Eustis is pretty rough. And I'm like, yeah, no, you have no idea. And so, no, it didn't bother me.
Right. So are you still in the same home?
We are not.
You're not.
No.
Yeah.
We got a home after.
Yeah. So Bonnie talked a little bit earlier about the testing, and the testing is both physical testing and also some written testing to become a main board.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Which is very difficult. So I have Sherry's daughter just came through the Criminal Justice Academy. She's a police officer in South Portland. And so as we're at the graduation, when normal police are done, the wardens still have a long way to go.
They still have about 17 to 18 weeks.
Additional. Exactly. And that's a testimony to the body of responsibility that they have.
Yeah.
And they have responsibilities that regular law enforcement people don't have in terms of jurisdiction.
Right.
Which is amazing. So, well, thanks for sharing that about Blaine. So moving to Copeland Plantation pulled you away from LLB.
Yeah.
So somewhere in there, you're now an experienced fly fisher. Semi-experienced fly fisher, and now you've been pulled out of your element of Pine Point, Southern Maine. Is this when you decide to become a Maine guide?
No, I actually got my guide's license when I worked at Beans.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the things they encouraged us, because it would make us look more credible
Of
on
course.
the floor. They can't do anything. Either you know it or you don't, as you know.
Yep.
A lot of people went to guide school. All they do is prepare you for the test. They don't prepare you for being a guide.
No.
So there was a bunch of us there, and they said, we'll support you any way we can, give us time to study together and to work together, try to figure this all out. And so I got my guide's license before I left LL Beans.
Was the fishing guide's license the first license that you went for?
I actually got the whole thing at that time.
You got a master's?
I got a master's right from the get-go.
Wow. That's not easy to do. I did not. I had a recreation first.
Yeah.
And then I got fishing, and then I went back and got hunting. So I broke it up. So I know the body of work. For the listening audience, you want to go through a difficult time, go get your master guide's license. It's not easy.
No, it was it.
And
you
did it at one
shot. So because you could at that time.
Yes, you could. Yeah.
If you didn't happen to pass something, you could go back and take just that section. I'm not sure how that works out. And I think to get the master, you have to have your guide's license for so many years, and before they do that. So it's different. Now I would not want to do it again.
No,
I'll be one of those people that will never let that lapse.
Well, you might have been someone going into it. I know I certainly was, where I wasn't anticipating I was going to pass. I was hoping I was going to pass, but I was prepared to retest.
Oh,
right?
There was no question in my mind that I was going to have to retest.
But you didn't.
But I didn't.
So you won over Leanne Gorman, and you won over the board at the Maine guide test. So you're scoring A's so far.
So
in this new career as a outdoor fisher person.
Right.
So, okay, so you got your license at LLB. Now you're up in Copeland Plantation.
Had no thoughts of ever using that license. I got that license because they encouraged us to at Beans.
Yeah.
Because it made them look more credible on the sales floor. But I never thought in a million years I'd use the license. I got to Copeland, and the first thing that happened is Tim Pond called me and said, we heard you did fly fishing schools with LL Beans. Would you be interested in doing a school for us? And I said, sure. Hung up the phone and said, what am I thinking? But I put it together, and I did a school for them. So that was my first fly fishing school there. And then the steward at Mechanic Club called. I said, I need a guide. Would you be interested in guiding? And I told him I'd never guided a day in my life, but if you'll take a chance, sure. And he said, well, if you'll take a chance on us, I'll take a chance on you. And that's what he said. So I went in and started guiding.
Just as a matter of reference, were the Gormans members of Mechanic at that time, or
they were, but he did not know that I was going to be up there.
Gotcha.
I did end up guiding him for over 26 years, but he did not know at that time that I was going to be up there.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So just for myself and for the audience too, Bonnie, tell us, what is Tim Pond Camps?
Oh, it's a great spot. It really is. Tim Pond is one of the older sporting camps in the state of Maine. It's been continuously run for a lot of years. They do a wonderful job, and the food is great, but it's the only set of camps on this wonderful pond. It's like a little fish hatchery. There's a ton of fish in that place, and the fish are beautiful. I think lots of times, as you know, some of the places you fish, even in the fall, the colors are brighter, but they're still not bright. Mm-hmm. But you'll go to another pond, and they're very bright. They're brilliant. So Tim Pond is kind of one of those brilliant colors of fish. And so I've just been going in there for a million years.
Yeah.
It's a great place. They have the fly fishing, but they also do bird hunting in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that is a place where you and I could bring some friends or family and rent a cabin and go.
Yes.
Mechanic Club, not so
Not so
much.
much.
So explain for the audience.
Yeah. So, when you go to a sporting camp here in Maine, like Tim Pond camps, that is open to the public. And so you just like going to a hotel, you make your reservations. The better part of that is when you go to a sporting camp, chances are that one price that you pay then includes everything. It includes they make your beds in the morning, they feed you, and there's usually a boat, motor, or canoe available to you. Something like Mechanic Club is a private lodge. It's a private sporting camp, and it's a membership only type thing.
Invite only.
Invite only.
List. Yeah. I want to say that there's 100. Am I right in saying that?
Probably 100 members.
Right.
It might be a little more.
And it's kind of the who's who of the upper crust of the New England fly fishing community. In a good way. I mean, everyone I've ever met, wonderful, wonderful people.
Yeah, and not just New England.
Yeah.
They're literally from all over.
Exactly.
It's the sporting camp industry is such a part of Maine's heritage. It is very special to me. And that wasn't the only place that I, guided, obviously. It's kind of like we're all over the state, different places guiding.
So Tim Pond calls you, asks you to teach a class. Mechanic calls you and asks you to do some guiding. What happens next?
So then just, word of mouth. I never advertised. All my sports were word of mouth. So somebody would call, I'm going to be over in Rangeley. Would you guide me over there? I'm going to be at Weatherby's. Will you come up there? Maybe up to the West Branch. Would you go there? So it's kind of.
So your clients started asking you to follow them where they were going to go fishing.
Yeah.
Wow. So you learned the ropes.
Yeah. Kind of from the beginning up.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing.
And I think I learned from them. Thank goodness.
So at some point, Bonnie, you're guiding men mostly, aren't you? Or you go ahead.
90%.
90%. And 10%.
Probably more than that.
And right, maybe 95% now.
Yeah.
But you're occasionally getting some context with women. Did that plant a seed for you? Or
no, surprisingly, no, not really.
You know where I'm going.
I do.
Yeah.
But no, not really. Growing up with 4 brothers, hanging around guides, I was the only female guide in there. So, and everywhere I went, I was usually the only female guide. So I was just used to being around guys. So, and at that time, when you think back, because we're talking close to 40 years ago, I was one of the few active. There were a lot of women that had their guides licenses, some really great guides, women guides, but there weren't a lot that were doing it as a full-time job. And I was I chose not to get into hunting. I had my guide's license for hunting, but I chose not to do that. But as far as fishing goes, it was a full-time job for a lot of years for me in the summer. And as you know, it can be busy. I was doing between 120 and 130 days a season.
Yeah.
And that was quite a bit at that time. And there just weren't that many women that were guiding at that time. Now there's a lot, which is such a wonderful thing because it's such a great thing for us.
It's a wonderful occupation.
Yeah.
I went away from it for a little while. I did it part-time for a little while, but I'm back at it full-time now. It's a job that gives back to you.
Yeah.
And it's for me, it's 90% the people and 10% the fishing.
Right.
I really enjoy the company. And as you and I said before, the longest day is when you're in a boat with someone that doesn't do any talking.
Right. That's a long day.
And so I try to surround myself with people that I find interesting, and they also find my companionship rewarding as well. And as a result, and I know just because of your reputation that, like you said a minute ago, your clients will say to you, Bonnie, I'm going here and I want you to come guide me, knowing full well you have never maybe fished at Grand Lake Stream.
Right.
So that puts it in context that it was really you that they wanted to spend time with, independent of where they were going to go fishing, and that they felt that you would have their best interest.
Yeah, I guess so.
So on that same note, Bonnie, we've had some great trips. We really honor our best clients. But I can also think back when I was first getting started, and even occasionally more recently, sometimes a trip just falls apart on you.
Right.
Did you have anything ever happen like that for you where something just went right off the rails?
Oh, yeah. And I think any guy that says otherwise, they're lying to themselves and to others because we're all going to have those trips.
Is there a story there?
There's a few times, like you say, over the years.
Anything you could share?
There is one. So I'm at a sporting camp and I've been hired by a family. So son and daughter are going to go, which are probably in the 30s, 40s. They're going to go with one guide, and I'm giving the parents. Part of the reason I think I was giving the parents is because my mother was handicapped, and so one of the gentlemen was handicapped. So it was a husband and wife, and the husband was not nice. He was really grumpy, and I go to try to help him, and it's just not nice. I thought it was because he didn't want a woman guide. I found out later the reason why, but it wasn't necessarily that. I go to get them, and they want to go fishing, and I said, okay. I asked them if I can help them down, and it meant just, anything I can take for you. Can I take your pack? No, I can get down there myself. Okay, fine. And he'd been grumpy enough to me that I was now, okay, just going to do the bare minimum. Not going to get a tip out of this one anyway.
Go through the motions.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through the motions. I'm going to do the best I can, but I don't need to be super friendly to this man. The wife was a sweetheart. So the weather is turning bad, and it's starting to rain. We're all in full rain gear. Get up to where we want to fish and get around this island, and there's a nice lead there, and I'm seeing some fish popping. And so have him start casting. Cast like once. He said, okay, it's time. I want to go back. I had to struggle to get up to that because the wind was blowing, and I'm in a double-ended Rangeley boat, so I'm rowing up there. And I just the comment I made was, well, why don't we? I said the fish is starting to pop. If you want to just take a couple more casts. I'm not paying you for that. I'm paying you to do what I tell you to do. Okay, then. So I start rowing back. I know I could see the expression, if you want to knock this guy into next week. And I kind of wanted to too, but obviously you can't be like that. So I come
Well,
around.
you can't be like that if you're working for a sporting camp, but if you work for yourself, you can be anybody you want to be.
Yeah.
But I understand. Keep going,
Yeah.
buddy,
So, and I actually, he had my attitude. He knew what I felt like. So I pull out around the corner of the island, and now we're talking white caps, and it's just horrendous. And I can't even row. All I'm doing is steering the boat back, at least, go in that direction. And these double-ended Rangeley boats are pretty heavy. Once you get them moving, they're not bad to go. And all of a sudden, we're taking on water. The boat is trying to flip. And the gentleman has slipped off his seat, and he's half into the water. And he's a big man. He probably weighs 250. He's a pretty good sized guy. He's in back of me. So I tried to get, and the wife's eyes just popped open. And so I said, okay, he's died. Because I'm not getting any response when I'm yelling back at him, and the wind is howling and the whole bit. And so I'm like, okay, this isn't good. Things could be going better for me than they are right now. And I got the boat into the wind again, into the waves again. So I'm heading the right direction, turn around, and I literally picked the man up and put him back on the seat and told him to hold on. And he never said a word. I'd asked, finally he did respond, I can't move. Got him up onto the seat. All he had done is he slipped off, but he slipped off onto the gunnel of the boat, and it was starting. And so we were bringing in water, and I think we were going to flip over. I can't bail. I can't do anything. I've just got to keep us going because of the weather and the way the waves are now kind of trying to break over the boat. So a couple other guides happened to see what was happening, and they're running down the hill now to try to help me out. And I finally get into the dock. They helped me. They said, we'll take care of the boat. You take care of your people. I get the gentleman out of the boat, and he looks up at me very sheepishly, and he said, can you help me up to Cam? I said, of course I can. And I helped his wife out. And then I got up there, and again, he's just looking at me, and he's horrified by what had happened, and he's embarrassed, and he's scared, because it was a very scary moment for all involved. And so anyway, he said, I don't know if you'll do this, but we can't even get ourselves undressed, and I needed to get them warm. They were going hypothermic. So I got them undressed, got them under the covers of their beds. And one of the other guides brought some hot coffee and hot cocoa and got that all set into them, got their wood stoves cranking. And I said, you guys good? And they said, we are. And I said, okay, I'll come down and check on you in a little while. And he said, thank you. Thank you so much. And that was, an eye opener for me.
Sure
so
is.
I was glad I kind of stayed nice to it. And I stepped outside the door. I couldn't walk down the steps. The adrenaline was gone. So that was one of my scariest moments.
Sure was.
Yeah.
Well, you are, at the end of the day, you are not getting paid to catch fish. You're really...
To keep them safe.
Yes. Safe trip. Good trip.
Yeah.
I think that gets lost in translation a lot when people hire a guy. I hired you to know all the bugs and I'm gonna know all that stuff, but the big thing I'm gonna know about is when to get you out of here.
That's
Skill set. Think lightning storms, think wind, think change of weather, reading the weather. People don't realize how much we need to know as being.
Several times I've had people to lay down and bottom the boat, and then get as sure as fast as I can.
So just to recap, Bonnie, you worked at Mechanic, you worked at Tim Pond camps, you worked at Weatherby. Any of the other camps in the area? That you
Grants, Lakewood, Libby's.
All
Yeah.
all over.
All over.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. How's guiding changed from when you first started to? I mean, do you still guide now?
So not so much now, partly because you do have to hustle. You have to hustle to get your name out. And I had because I stopped guiding for 4 years, it's hard. You can't get those sports back because they're happy with who you put them with. And that's a good thing. So it meant you chose well, and
That's right.
And you hope you chose well, or encourage them to go with somebody, and you hope that works out for them. And I guess I'm now in my 60s, and I wasn't willing to hustle it.
No.
So I still do the Tim Pond Fly Fishing School, and I still do guide once in a while. I'll get somebody that will call and say, can you just take me out for the afternoon? Or, and more than that, some of my sports from a million years ago, say my grandchildren, I'd like you to give them some casting lessons.
That's great.
And, so do that for a few hours in a day.
So instruction is really, I think instruction says a lot more about a guy. I mean, people can row a boat, they can maybe tie a fly on, but to be able to teach someone how to fly fish is another skill set altogether different.
It is.
And you have that.
I think I do.
Yeah.
I always say, if you can't do it, you teach it.
And if you can't teach it, fake it, right? Or something like that.
Exactly.
No, but seriously.
I think I can fish as good as the average person can.
Yes.
I think I do an okay job with that. But I think I can see in other people what's working and what isn't working for them. And it's not a matter of changing. Some people, it's black and white on how the cast should look.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not going to change somebody's habits that quickly. No. And so work with that habit and see what you can do to make the cast work for them instead of work against them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've never gone and got my federation.
No.
FF thing.
Yeah. Federation of Fly Fishers.
Yeah. I kind of thought I would do that at one point, but I never did.
Nope.
So
I did.
Yeah.
But, I'm not a member now, mainly because I thought it was a one and done skill set. Once I felt like I learned how to understand the fundamentals of the cast, you don't have to have the certification to understand. You do need to learn from people.
Yeah.
And so you started out as an instructor at LL Bean, as well as working in retail space. Yeah. So you started out with that fundamental, 4-part cast. This is how you pick up.
And when I was there and working with the LL Bean Fly Fishing School, it was Dave Whitlock that was the instructor.
Yeah.
Yes, that wasn't a bad way to start.
No, Dave Whitlock's name comes up a lot in the podcast. Macaulay Lord talked about him. Tom Ackerman talked about him. But Dave Whitlock, just for clarification, who is Dave Whitlock?
He is a well-known angler.
Well, he's not with us now.
No, he's not. Unfortunately, passed away.
But tell us your Dave Whitlock story.
So my Dave Whitlock story was he was the main instructor for LL Beans while I was there. So he was great. He would take you right under his wing. And he wanted you to know everything he knew. So it was wonderful to work with him. We had a lot of laughs, and he taught me a lot. And I can remember being on Grand Lake Stream with him, and I'd never nymph fished. And so he was kind of showing me some nymph fishing, and he had moved on. He was down the stream a ways, and I caught a fish, and he's like trying to get back up to me. Why aren't you yelling and screaming and letting me know that you got a fish on? He was so excited that what he taught me worked, that it was a successful technique. And so he was a great guy to learn from. And of course he was an incredible illustrator, so his books really show everything, it just, I thought he did a great job. It was sad, but we've lost some of the greats, and it's kind of a sad thing for me because I kind of grew up with them and them being my friends.
I just want to make one comment about Dave Whitlock that happened just recently. Someone in one of my Facebook fly fishing groups who was showing off that they had a book that was autographed and signed by Dave Whitlock, and he would put his illustration next to his signature. And the illustration was a piece of art in itself.
Yes,
I bet you have several of those.
I do.
Right? I don't have, but we both share books from Lefty.
Yes, we do.
So let's talk about Lefty. Yeah. You must have met Lefty through Beans.
I did. When I first met him, he was the photography guru, if you want to say, for LL Beans. And how we first got talking is while I was there, we were going to be going on a trip to the Bahamas, and just talking to him, he says, well, you need to go to Andrews Island and you need to do this, you need to do that. And he sent us some flies that I never used and they had put away, which was smart.
Collectibles, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, to me, they
Yep.
are. And, so we got talking at that point, and then just from that moment on, we just became good friends.
Yes.
We were just good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a special guy.
And when I say we, meaning you and I and Bill Pierce and Bob Dion and your husband Blaine, or really the main fishing community kind of hung out whenever we go to these shows at Marlborough or Somerset. Lefty would seek you out.
Yeah.
We go to dinner.
Yeah.
And when I picked Lefty and King Montgomery up at the Jetport, this had to be 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. I think some of the first words out of his mouth to me in the satellite parking lot is, where's Bonnie? I said, she's going to meet us at the, what's the place at Sunday River called?
Jordan House?
Jordan House.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you you and Blaine are there. We're all going to fish together the next day. We're going to have dinner. And he was complete with me. So getting Lefty into Maine, he didn't want a lobster. He didn't want to see a lighthouse. He wanted to see Bonnie Holt.
Yeah. That's sweet.
And he wanted to fish with you. And that was, he thought the world of you. And he would refer to you as the woman from LLB.
Yeah.
That's what he would say.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, we knew who he was talking about. This Flyline flashback focuses on the Maine sporting camp tradition, which is unique to the Maine sporting heritage and outdoor culture. Many New England states have private hunting and fishing clubs and game preserves, as well as private camps and rustic estates. Maine is known for its sporting camps. While there is no definition in the Webster's Dictionary of a Maine sporting camp, it is commonly accepted that a sporting camp is an establishment that provides lodging, meals, a good fellowship for fishermen, hunters, and outdoor recreational enthusiasts. Sporting camps usually consist of private individual cabins accompanied by a main dining lodge. Maine sporting camps are open to paying customers and are a cultural and enterprising resource unique to the state of Maine. Nearly all sporting camps are on a lake or river, generally in a remote area of forested land. Most have buildings made of peeled and chinked logs with porches overlooking the water. Guest cabins are clustered near the shore and typically in proximity of a central dining lodge. There are two distinct arrangements at most sporting camps that have evolved and changed with the times. Traditional American plan lodges provide 3 hearty home-cooked meals served in an attractive main lodge. Some have cocktail lounges and recreation rooms. Many camps offer housekeeping plans for guests who want to do their own cooking. Some camps offer both American plan and housekeeping plans to meet the needs of their clientele. Nearly all camps provide canoe, motorboat, and equipment rentals and offer the services of knowledgeable Maine guides. The oldest existing Maine sporting camp is Tim Pond Camps in Eustis. The first camp was built in 1832 by Charles Lyman Eustis and his indigenous guide Tim, and was used as a lumbering camp. Tim guided fishermen and began charging sports for lodging as well as guided fishing and hunting trips utilizing these early structures. With respect to these new sporting camps popping up around the state in the mid to late 1800s, accessing these camps was part of the allure, with the earliest guests traveling by railroad, steamboat, horse-drawn wagon, or canoe to eventually arrive at their desired destination. Over time, the Bangor, Aroostook, Central Maine, and the Somerset railroads delivered tourists and visitors to Maine sporting camps, and the tourism became very profitable ventures for these railroad lines and their investors. Ultimately, the allure of the Maine sporting camp changed, as all things do. As society was evolving with the changing times, families could drive on paved roads to motels or fly in airplanes to faraway vacation destinations. The tradition of the Maine sporting camp and their sprawling success faded as their traditional guests found new alternatives to getaway vacations. This industry and heritage has been seriously pressured by changes in land ownership and land management policies, as well as the financial strains of operating a successful business enterprise in a remote setting without Wi-Fi, electric power, or modern conveniences that we have grown to expect and require in our present lives. To help organize the existing and successful sporting camp industry in Maine, the Maine Sporting Camp Association was founded in 1987 by a group of camp owners to preserve the sporting camp's uniqueness in the state of Maine. Their goal is to share marketing and business resources to advocate for this unique industry as a group rather than the individual establishments. In 1904, there were at least 300 sporting camps in operation in Maine. By 1997, 78 established Maine sporting camps remained in existence. The sporting camp experience is as unique today as it was 150 years ago. These family-run businesses offer rustic cabins surrounded by fantastic wild scenery and wildlife. They are protected family vacation settings that still offer traditional outdoor recreation like fishing, hunting, hiking, and wildlife watching. And now, back to the second half of the podcast. So moving up to this area, Bonnie, let's get away from fly fishing for a minute, because one of the things that I want to segue into casting for recovery, but you also started Goldsmith Gallery. What happened first?
So when we moved up here, I obviously needed to work. It would have been nice not to have to work. But since Blaine is not independently wealthy, I always joke that I should have married rich instead of cute.
No.
But
great looking guy.
He is a good looking guy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I needed to work, and a woman that knew somebody that I had guided, actually, she was friendly with him down at Booth Bay Harbor, and said, this woman that's probably going to need a job this winter and might give her a call. So she did. And she owned Goldsmith Gallery. I worked for her for 3 years, and then she wanted out, and I bought the store.
So the gallery was originally?
It was originally in Booth Bay Harbor, and she brought it to Sugarloaf. Oh. And then she was up here for 3 years, as well as Booth Bay in the summertime. And then she sold it to me. And so I would do that in the wintertime, and then I'd guide in the summer.
Perfect.
Yeah, it was great.
You had your winter gig and your summer gig.
Yeah.
So if you were, let's say you were Sugarloaf for a week and you forgot your spouse's birthday, you could go buy a brooch or a ring or, I don't know. I'm not a jewelry.
Yeah. So it was. It was mostly Maine-made jewelry.
Maine-made jewelry.
Yeah. And mostly Maine artists.
Great.
And so I represented both. So it was interesting to me. So a lot of people say, well, that's really, really far apart, the two separate lifestyles. And yes, I guess you could say that,
Yes,
yeah, it's fly fishing is an art.
Well, part of it is you're teaching, the other part of it is you're doing retail. But in both cases, you're dealing with humans.
Right.
And you're working on your interpersonal skills, which you have incredible interpersonal skills. But I also noticed that a lot of your clients, there was some pour over between winter and summer.
Yes.
I know the skiers and fly fishermen are kind of cut from a similar fabric.
They are.
And so you would do fishtails and cocktails as a fundraiser for Casting for Recovery. Let's back up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Casting for Recovery. Tell me, Bonnie Holden, give me your definition of what is Casting for Recovery as a national organization. And then I want to talk to you about what happened with Casting for Recovery in Maine while you were doing it. So what is? Yeah.
So Casting for Recovery is a retreat and fly fishing school for breast cancer survivors. And the reason for that is because the casting motion mimics lots of therapy motions for lymphedema and soft tissue recovery.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah. So that's the biggest reason for why that happens. Blows your way, doesn't it?
I never knew that.
But you think about that, any muscles that are attacked from the cancer and the lymph nodes are going to be in your arms and in your chest. And so being able to do that casting motion, that's giving that lymphedema. It's getting the fluid moving through your arms.
You're literally casting for recovery.
You're literally casting.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
And I bet the audience didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that is what the organization is. It existed before you were aware?
It did. It had just started up. It had been going for a couple of years yet. So I was invited to talk to a women's health symposium down at Bowdoin College for sort of a healthy lifestyle, being a guide in the outdoors. And while I was there, I did my thing. And I saw two women just talking to other women that were there. They weren't giving a presentation, but they were just talking to women as they come along. And I stood back and listened to the conversation. And it was talking about casting for recovery. And so I walked up to them and I said, well, I teach fly fishing schools and I guide, so I could probably give up a weekend a year. And they told me more about it. And that was probably the most naive thing I've ever done in my life, as far as thinking I would only give up one weekend a year.
That was the beginning of an occupation almost.
It really was. It takes a whole year to put a retreat together.
Right.
So anyway, I talked to them and I didn't pull it off that year, but I did the next year. And it was just such a good fit. It was, in a way, because as I've said, I'm not used to working with women.
Right.
I'm used to working with men.
Right.
And I get, I just relate better that way. But I was going to be dealing with 12 women. And I can remember telling Blaine, I said, I don't want to deal with 12 women. I said, what are we even going to talk about? But that first retreat was an eye-opener.
Was it here in Maine?
It was, the first retreat was actually in Minnesota, I think. But the state of Maine retreat is the longest running, continuously running retreat in the country. I did the first one here in Maine. We did it at Tim Pond Camps.
Right. So the first Casting for Recovery, which is to say, Casting Recovery for Maine women.
For Maine women.
Was organized by you.
It was.
And it was a Tim Pond Camps.
It was.
And how long were you involved, and are you still involved in casting?
So for 26 years, well, actually 28, because I didn't get going, but so 26 retreats.
Yeah.
And then this year was the year I retired.
Good for you.
Yeah. And it was just, it was really hard decision in a way, but there were two women that had been involved for the last couple of years, and they just had such an interest and a drive. And I said, if I'm ever going to do it, I should do it while that interest and drive is there.
Yeah.
And they'll do things completely different than I did, which is great. It needs, things need change, and I'm not really good with change.
Right.
So they'll bring it to a whole new level, and it will be great.
They'll breathe some new air into it.
Yeah, they will. And, obviously the biggest part is raising the money for it, because the good thing about Casting for Recovery for the participants is it's free. And we raise money, and that's what Fishtails and Cocktails were all about, is raising money for that retreat.
So if you would, Bonnie, I'm now a breast cancer survivor. I'm speaking metaphorically, and I'm going to be joining. How long is this Casting for Recovery outing? How long does it last? And what does it entail?
So it's a weekend. We do it on weekends. Different places do it different times. But in Maine, we do it on a weekend. We arrive Friday evening, and it's a riot. The prep, everybody's screaming around, get ready for these ladies. But anyway, they arrive Friday evening, and we have a social time to get to know each other. And what is amazing to me is you're getting usually 14 women that have never met before in their lives, but they have a common denominator. And so there's an instant, can't stress that enough, instant bond. We've been really fortunate in the state of Maine. The sporting camp industry has been wonderful to us. They've been incredibly supportive. And for a lot of years, the sporting camps didn't even charge me for the retreat. So I was very fortunate that way. And then economics comes into play, and so they need to. But, we've been very, very fortunate that way. So they arrive Friday evening at a sporting camp. Usually the camps are right on the edge of a lake or a pond or a river or whatever. Yeah. And so it's wonderful that the women get to kind of recharge their batteries. And just like in anything else you do in your life, when things are very stressful and totally out of your control,
right,
you sometimes just need that mind switch. And that's exactly what it is. You come to something like this, you're able to talk to people that have the same issues that you had. They understand what you're talking about. I can empathize and sympathize, but I don't know, and I hope I never do know. But you have 13 other women that do know, and you can share things. And one of the things I think is interesting is everybody always asks me, they say, oh, it must be a lot of crying, a lot of tears. Yeah, there are tears, but it's from laughter.
That's right.
Yeah. Some of the laughter is totally in the tank. It's really sick.
Yeah.
And part of it is, what are you going to do if you don't laugh about something? But their friends and family can't do that. They can't laugh at that. They don't get it. And they don't understand that this is the way to cope. So they can do that here.
Yeah.
They don't have to censor what they say. They don't have to say to their friends and family, no, I'm okay, because they're not. And when they come to a retreat, they can say out loud, no, I'm not okay. And they'll have somebody to give them a hug or a pat on the back and say, we're in this together.
Well, they're surrounding themselves with people that are all in a similar situation. I mean, the empathy is going to be deep. It's going to be present, and there's nobody going to be pointing a finger at anybody else in that room. No, it's one big life raft.
It is.
Right?
It is.
That's incredible. So, Bonnie, At some point, you took a position working with the state at IF&W.
I did.
Tell me about that adventure.
Sure. So I'm in Florida. I know. Look at the look on your face. Like, how did that come about?
Well,
So
no, I knew you used to go to Florida.
we go to Florida
fly
in the
fish down
spring.
there, right?
Yeah, we do fish while we're down there. And actually,
Your parents go down there, don't they?
yeah, they did. They both.
But they did.
passed it,
They
but
went.
they did.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're down in Florida and we're meeting with a bunch of friends from Maine. And one of the friends happened to be Andrea Erskine, who at that time was deputy commissioner with Chandler. And so we're all talking and everybody's asked, so when you get the guide trip set up for the summer? And I said, I do. I said, June is really busy. I said, July is really lagging for some reason. I haven't got as much in July as I would like to have. And, we're just chit-chatting along. And all of a sudden, Andrea says, you and I need to talk. And she's like pulling me out of we're at lunch, at a restaurant, and we go for a walk. And she said, I'd like to put you in as the director of information education. And I started laughing. And I said, I have no experience in that. And she said, think about your lifestyle, Bonnie.
Yeah.
She said, actually, you do.
Was this a new position?
No, what happens is that, at that time, it's not anymore, which is great. But at that time, it was an appointed position. So you really didn't have to have any background in that. It's an appointed position and kind of a political type thing.
Understood.
And, but Andrea said, yeah, I think you'd be a good fit. The person that had in there, they needed somebody in there, person had left. And, so anyway, I was all excited and we talked about it. And she said, when you get home from Florida, give me a call. I said, okay. And then it wasn't not even a day after that. I said, Blaine, I bet Andrea's thinking, what was I thinking? It was an impulse thing to say anything to her. So I said, I'm not going to worry about it. I don't think it'll come to pass. So we didn't talk about it anymore. We just kind of left
you
it
and
there.
Blaine.
Blaine and I, right?
Yeah.
So we get back from Florida and Blaine says, you might at least call her. So that she can either, tell her she doesn't have to worry that you're okay if she didn't really want to put you in there or whatever. And so I get a hold of her on the phone and she says, can you come down tomorrow to talk to us? So I went down for an interview and I hadn't been on an interview in a lot of years. And it was with her and Chandler. And I did not realize they had already made up their mind.
Yeah.
They had already decided that they thought I'd be a good fit.
Right.
And so that's how that happened.
And you had known Chandler before this.
I had.
Just because of our Franklin County proximity.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a great surprise.
Yeah.
But it
was a paid position.
It was a paid position.
And were you driving to Augusta every day?
I did to start with for a little bit. And then I had friends that lived in Kents Hill area, Mount Vernon. And so I went down there and stayed with them. And then it was only half an hour in to work. I stayed with them that summer. And then after that, a friend of ours, a husband who had passed away, and her kids wanted somebody to stay with her. Mm-hmm. She had an in-law apartment. She was healthy as a horse, in her 70s, so she was healthy as a horse and was fine, but they were more comfortable. And so I ended up staying with her for 4 years. And I was in Bodenham. So I'd stay there during the week, and either Blaine would come down or I'd go home weekends.
Nice.
Blaine came down a lot because there's a lot to do in that area. So
yeah,
came down a lot.
So what ends up happening at the end of that, Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, is that once the governor leaves,
right,
in this case LePage, and his appointment, which in that case was Chandler Woodcock, is leaving, your position really ends.
It does. It doesn't always.
Right.
It doesn't always because I was not politically affiliated, which is interesting in that aspect of it. But it usually does. Mm-hmm. And in this particular case, it did. I had hopes that I'd be able to stay, but I kind of knew it wasn't going to.
If you lived in Manchester or you lived in Gardner, you would have been, well, it's so easy for me to do this job. But that must not have been an easy job for you to do from your perch in Copeland Plantation. I know you said your living arrangement, but still.
Right. Part of it was the difficulty was that I didn't have any experience. I'd been working for myself for 30-something years, and now you're going to work for somebody else.
Right.
And you have a staff. So now you're a director. So you have quite a few staff members that you are dealing with. And I can remember saying to Emily McCabe, who has that job now, she was put in there full time, and it's a permanent position, which is a great the great thing that the state did.
Now, I don't know because I'm ignorant in order to see the audience. McCabe is also the name of a ward.
Right. Her husband.
It's her husband.
Chris.
Chris
Chris
McCabe.
McCabe.
Thank you.
And
That's
Emily is now Director of Information and Education, which is the driving force of trying to get the word out about the hunting and fishing in the state of Maine
Totally.
and getting people to be interested in not just buying licenses and stuff, but the health and respect of everything in the outdoors.
Totally.
So
I understand.
you want to try to bring that to pass. And because I had no experience in any of that, and I said I had no management experience. And Emily looked at me, she says, "You've been managing casting for recovery and Special Olympics for years." So
Exactly.
You kind of do. And that was kind of a little bit of a confidence booster for me. And I think I did have some things to bring to the table. Just like any position, when you leave, there are people that like you and people that don't, but that's a reality in anything like that.
Bonnie, I know, I don't know how to say this otherwise. You're very humble. You don't like to blow your horn, but you are a recipient of the Wiggy Robinson Award for
best things in your life.
Tell me, well, for the audience, this is the highest level of prestige you can receive as a Maine guide. Bonnie was the first woman to receive it in the state of Maine, which is to say that she has now been recognized by the state, and that is the commissioner of IFNW, Judy Camuso, and the board of Maine Professional Guides Association as being the finest guide that they could offer the honor to that year. And you've won.
I have.
First woman ever to get it.
And because I've been part of that board in the past. What's so meaningful to something like that is you're chosen by your peers.
That's right.
And it was a huge, huge honor. And it was an incredibly huge surprise.
Tell me about the surprise.
So they don't tell you.
No, they don't.
That's the fun.
This is a story in itself. So let's hear, and I don't know it. So tell us the story.
So I had worked for the state for 4.5 years. And in February, I'd lost my job. I had a little bit of hope that I'd stay there, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. But that hope is there. So anyway, I left, and then the guides banquet's coming up, and Blaine said, "Are we going to go to the banquet?" And I said, "Nah." I said, "I don't think I'm ready to."
Had you gone to it before?
Yeah. But what I did for my job, was part of my job. I said, "Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I'm ready to go to that. See all the people I worked with and stuff." I said, "No, I think I'm good." And Blaine never said a word. He did a great job. He never said a word. So other friends of ours said, "So you guys going to the banquet?" This is not long before the banquet. "So you guys going to the banquet?" I said, "Nah, I don't think so." And they said, "Oh, you should go. It'll be a lot of fun. Why don't we all go together?" And I said, "Nah, well, thanks anyway." So then they call again, because now they're getting desperate.
Will you say they?
It's Dale and Edie Dunlap.
Yeah.
And so Edie comes up to me. She says, "You know what? Some friends of ours gave us their ticket because they can't go." Because I did make the comment, I didn't want to spend the money. So she says, "So we have the tickets." And I said, "Oh, no, that's okay. But thanks. Give it to somebody that really."
I can just imagine Blaine is just sweating at this.
Well, they both are now.
Yeah.
And so Edie says, "Well, I thought Blaine wanted to go. Maybe you should ask him." So I did. And Blaine said, "Yeah, I'd kind of like to go. It's not going to cost us anything. Why don't we just go?" And I said, "All right." So in the meantime, we're in the car. Now it's the day of the banquet, and we're in the car and we're getting ready to drive up to the banquet.
And you don't know who's been nominated, and you don't know who's gone.
No, I did know who was nominated because just before I left, we were starting that process, and I knew my name had been thrown in there, and I pulled it out. I thought, and so I thought, there were some incredible people there, so that's what makes it even.
Well, you're an incredible person, Bonnie.
Wow. And so we're in the car, and Tim Peabody texts me, and he says, "Are you going to the banquet?" And I'm thinking, oh, Tim Peabody is the deputy commissioner. And I thought maybe I had remembered to sign something. I hadn't passed something over I was supposed to pass over. So I'm thinking something would work.
Yeah, he wants to connect.
And so I said yes, and just left it at that. And Blaine, I saw his look was kind of a weird look. And it was because what's he talking to her for? She's going to guess. But I didn't, So anyway, we get to the banquet and everybody's chit-chatting, and I see Tim Peabody, and I said, "Hey, Tim, what was it that you needed?" And he just, I'm good. And he just walks by me. And I'm like, well, I guess it could have been that important. So now we're everybody's sitting down and they're ready to get started. And Judy Camuso gets up and wants to lead everybody on, because if you've been to that banquet, it's pins and needles. Everybody's anxious to hear who got it, and it's exciting. And, it's, okay, who's going to get it? It's very, very exciting moment. And the only people at my table that knew were Dale and Edie, because, they talked us into going. And so Dale, they knew, because Blaine trying to get me up there. So Judy starts to talk, and she starts laughing. She said, the minute I start this introduction, everybody in this room is going to know who this is, who this person is. So I can't drag it out. So she starts with, and, like I said, I'm sitting like this, kind of sitting up straight in my chair. And she said, so this was first woman to work in the fishing and hunting department of LL Bean. And because maybe me, I went, holy shit.
Yeah, you did.
Right out loud.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
And everybody at the table starts laughing, and everybody is, kind of making all kinds of faces now and stuff.
Gosh.
So
That's great.
it was just beyond shocking.
Yeah.
Beyond shocking.
You had a tear in your eye about.
Oh, I did. It was just, how meaningful it's your peers.
Yeah.
How meaningful it was. It was a great moment.
Yeah.
It was a great moment.
Well, you're very deserving of it, and anyone that I ever spoke to about you receiving it is just, they're over the moon about it, and I am too. I think it's wonderful. I know if Lefty was alive today, he would pull a hat right off his head and give it to you and sing Dave Whitlock. I want to talk about Blaine. Can we talk about Blaine?
Sure.
So I had an admission. I had a girlfriend in Farmington. We went to college together, and when I was working at Aardvark, she was around a lot because I was working there full time with Bob. And Blaine would come in, and her heart would go pitter pat. She thought Blaine was the second coming of John Denver and Jesus Christ. Because
I have never seen that resemblance.
John Denver, you hear people say it though, right?
Oh,
he has it in his eyes.
Since we were kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since we were in high school, people would say he looked like John Denver.
He was he had no idea that this person in the room was just, But anyhow, Blaine also won a really important award. I just needed to tell you that because I think that Blaine he's very charismatic. And as you know, you love him as much as anybody, more than anybody probably. But the people of the state of Maine also came to love Blaine to such a degree that they offered him Warden of the Year.
Yes.
And I know that there was a little secret going on about him getting that award.
Right.
And you were involved in that as well.
Yeah, you can't let him know.
No.
You can't.
But they let you know.
They let you know.
So tell that story.
So that you can get him there.
Yeah.
So he's going to go anyway. He loved going to the annual meeting. So it wasn't going to be hard to get him there, but kind of wanted to have family. Mm-hmm. But his mother would have let the cat out of the bag. So, and she was in Florida. She wasn't going to be able to come up to go to it anyway. But his sister and her husband made it. But then they're hidden. They don't know. People around us, one of the people know because they're the ones that nominated it. So one of the guys knew, but usually the other game wardens do not know. It's just, again, a small group of people that make that decision. And so
it's that decision.
So, well, it's chosen every year. I think they do. It's different group. They pull people in, and it's, and you're nominated from your peers. So people they'll ask for a nomination, mm-hmm. and you're nominated from your peers. Right. And so but I hear when they called his name, he just frozen face. He just sat there. I said, no, you got to get up. You got to go up. Except this morning, he just sat there.
How did he handle himself?
He went, Blaine is so chit-chatty and always smiling, and he just was frozen. He was just so surprised.
Right.
But he was, it meant a lot to him.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he just kind of went frozen. It just meant so much.
I remembered when he got it, and we were like kids on Christmas Day. We're so happy for him because Blaine's retired now.
Yes, he is.
Blaine was not a gotcha boy.
No.
If he was more like this is an opportunity for a learning experience.
Exactly.
And I think that's the thing that I personally admired about him, and that if I was ever to be a warden, I would want to walk in those same footsteps. That he was kind of part of the transition, Bonnie, because wardens used to be gotcha guys.
Yeah.
They used to hide in the shadows.
And he did all that.
I know he was damn good at it.
Yeah, he was.
And he knew how to find a poacher or do whatever he needed to do to close his investigation. But he'd also tell wonderful stories about how he would let people go with a warning.
Right.
And he felt like it was a learning opportunity. And I think that was a direction that the warden service really needed to take, because they were not doing well with their reputation.
Right.
And I remember a few times being out guiding and running into a warden maybe up above the Golden Road or somewhere that really probably should have retired about 10 years before he did.
Yeah.
And feeling like I had not run into Blaine Polding. And so when, any interaction I had with Blaine or Reggie, was wonderful whenever they come in the shop and they tell their wonderful story.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear great stories, either talk to a main guide or talk to a main warden, because they got a life of it.
And that's very true. That's very true. I think one of the things that Blaine had to his advantage as for being a game warden, he was very unassuming.
Yes.
And he's incredibly smart.
Yes.
He has pretty high IQ.
Yeah.
And and graduating like 4.0 from college. And I don't think people know that. And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So he's smart cookie. He went to a technical school.
Yeah.
And so he did very well.
He knows his way around a fly rod.
He does know his way around fly rod. He knows his way around hunting. Obviously I'm prejudiced, but I think he's one of the best casters you'll ever see.
He is.
Out in the waters.
Yeah.
And he definitely gets the job done. Probably catches more fish than a lot of people do.
Well, I remember the day we were without Lefty and Blaine caught about a 19-inch brown trout.
It was
and
trash fish.
And King Montgomery, who's a photographer, sitting there snapping shots of it. And Lefty says,
Get rid of that trash
"Get rid of that trash fish. It's screwing up my smallmouth fishing."
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, he was a riot.
Yeah.
Well, there's so many things that we can say about you, Bonnie, that are wonderful. I just have to get one last thing out. You were recognized in Outdoor Life magazine as one of the top 4 guides in the country. Do I have that correctly?
Top 5.
Top 5?
5 of us.
Okay.
That was cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And again, another well-deserving accolade.
Yeah.
And I think that you've just set such a large footprint. It's going to be hard for the next woman to come along to fill that footprint.
Oh, I think they're there, and I think they're doing it. I think they're doing it. I've been incredibly fortunate, and I think part of that, the guide thing, like you say, I never advertised. It was all word of mouth. So I was very fortunate that way to have work when you needed it. I think casting for recovery provided some opportunities, and I think, the top 5 guides, I think, was partly because of that. And I think the Legendary Guide Award, I think it plays into part of the work with casting for recovery. And I there was another thing, top 15 women in Maine. That was kind of a cool, that was a really cool thing too. Because again, that was year nominated from the public. People writing letters for that.
That's right.
And so I was one of the recipients of that. What was interesting about that, it was like doctors and lawyers and businesswomen and a guide.
Yeah.
So I just feel like I've been really fortunate.
You've lived a full life.
Yeah.
And these things that you just mentioned, all these accolades are different facets that are to be proud of. But the one thing that has brought you to each one of those is that you're a genuine person. And everybody that knows you knows that about you. There's no bullshit with Bonnie Holding.
No.
And you're not going to bullshit Bonnie Holding, right? So, when we look at things from a historical standpoint, one of the first women who's now really being recognized, rightfully, is Fly Rod Crosby.
Yeah.
Right. So we think of her as being really the first pioneer woman fly fisher.
Yeah.
And then a long time passed.
Yeah.
And Carrie Stevens, of course, tied the Gray Ghost. I was at Billy's house today looking at an original Carrie Stevens Gray Ghost flies with a lot of money.
Yeah.
But Carrie really wasn't an instructor. She was a tire, right?
Right.
And there was really not a place in the Maine fly fishing sporting community at the table for women for many years. And I think that you created a place at the table and invited a lot of other women to come and join that feast. And you opened a door that I think for a long time was closed to women. And I don't think you barged through it. I think it's just the opportunity came at the right time. Opportunity is at the intersection of preparedness and good timing, right?
Yeah.
And it worked out for you on all these things that we talked about, getting the job at the state, working at Magana Club. That working at Magana Club is not, that's nothing to thumb your nose at. That's really wonderful stuff. And Bonnie, it means everything that you took the time to share your story with us. And I really appreciate you getting involved in supporting the project.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Great that you called me.
Yeah, glad that I did.
How cool is that?
It's very cool. Thank you so much.
That brings us to the end of this episode.
Thank you for joining us for this intimate discussion, and thank you for listening to Flyline Podcast. A new Flyline Podcast episode will be released every 2 weeks on Tuesdays, so be sure to come back to meet our next famous guest. Until then, this is Michael Jones, and we invite you to visit the blog section of our website to enjoy photos and contributions from our guests and experience all of our episodes at flylinepodcast.com.